Hello, everybody. Good morning. It is such a pleasure to be here in Amsterdam addressing the entire XRPL developer community. I love Amsterdam. I haven't been here in a couple of years. I tell people it's because of the pandemic, but actually it's because marijuana is legal in most of the states now. No, I know Americans, when we think about Amsterdam, all we tend to think about is, drugs. So many people taking drugs, riding bicycles. I thought I was at the Tour de France. No, seriously though, there is a huge cryptocurrency and cryptography community in Amsterdam. A lot of you people may not know this, but we're actually less than a kilometer from the lab that developed the world's strongest hash, so. No, not right. No, you don't like that one. No. So we were down to either Amsterdam or Abu Dhabi, and I asked our events team whether they knew where the event was going to be, and they said they were worried some of the attendees might get stoned. I'm like, that doesn't narrow it down. All right, I could tell jokes all day, but we got a lot of content to go through, and I'd like to keep my job. I'm the CTO at Ripple. I get to work with amazing people, both inside Ripple and, of course, in the greater community. I mean, it's truly fantastic. And it is great to have Apex here in Europe. This is significant because there's a huge Web3 development group here. And the European market is very significant for XRPL developers and for the community at large. A lot of development going on in Europe and Asia, and of course, got to pick someplace. Our co-organizer is the XRPL Foundation, based in Europe as well, as is the XRPL Commons. Welcome to everybody from those organizations. Ripple's University Blockchain Research Initiative supports a whopping 14 European universities, including Netherlands-based Delft University of Technology, which just held an XRPL hackathon last week. We have some winners in the room here. They'll be presenting their demos for us, so welcome. I've noticed the web... Yeah, go ahead, give yourselves a round of applause. Amsterdam is an extremely crypto-friendly environment. We are more excited than ever to meet our XRPL and XRPL-interested developers and to show Ripple support in this exciting year. We have XRPL grantees present, 9 portfolio startups from the Ripple Accelerator program. Welcome. I think most of you know my story, but I think I want to tell just a little bit of it, that I've been working for what's now Ripple for more than 10 years. I started in November in 2011. These are some of the early days of the development of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency movement. And really, all there was Bitcoin and a couple of clones. And this was right around the time when the first cracks in the sort of mining narrative were becoming visible. Back at the time, most people thought that proof of work was sort of the secret sauce that made Bitcoin what it was. And the first cracks were first starting to show. The idea at the time was that anybody could mine and that would be a great decentralizing force. And I think we know now that mining has become very consolidated and that it is not a decentralizing force. The decentralizing force is all of you. The decentralizing force is the community. The decentralizing force is that the ledger is public, is that it's open source, that all the transactions are public, that everybody knows what every transaction does. So I want to go back to the beginning of why we are all here. The XRP ledger is constantly innovating, and you all are on that journey with us. The XRP ledger features fast, cheap, and scalable transactions. You can confirm a transaction with finality in about 5 seconds for much less than a penny. That's a time scale in which a human being doesn't get bored or annoyed. I know it's surprising to think how important that was. In the early days, we thought 30 minutes was super fast. But it's not when a human being is waiting for it, and it's not when you have a chain of dependencies. And you can get that confirmation with high reliability and predictability. There is not the variation in confirmation times that you see in other blockchains. And again, this is all from the design back in 2012. We focused on payments, and that is our historical legacy. Payments are at the core of everything that we do in this space. Everything else that you look at, and whether it's DeFi, whether it's loans, whether it's stablecoins, payments are at the heart of everything. Real-world asset tokenization. What are you going to do with a token? You're going to buy it, you're going to sell it, you're going to hold it. Well, 2 of those 3 things are payments. The XRP ledger's primary role, at least sort of functionally, is to be the authoritative registrar of XRP ownership, the origin of XRP, the core and root of XRP. But the XRPL ledger is much more than XRP. Since 2012, the XRP ledger has supported issued assets. These can be thought of as stablecoins, legal obligations, ICOs, tokens that represent something of value. One of the first things we realized when we looked at Bitcoin was that even if you thought Bitcoin was going to take over the world, it hadn't taken over the world yet. The vast majority of the world's value wasn't in Bitcoin and wasn't accessible to the Bitcoin blockchain. There would have to be gateways. You have to connect to where the value is. People are not just going to abandon everything of value in the world and suddenly start using some new source of value. They may get there eventually, but there have to be bridges to get them there. And so the XRP ledger provided the world's first decentralized asset exchange in 2012. Nobody knew what a decentralized asset exchange was. That word didn't exist for years later. We didn't know how to describe it and talk about it, but we had it, and it worked, and it's been in continuous operation, handling real money since then to now. And we're going to talk about that a lot more today. A major XRPL feature is sophisticated support for cross-currency and cross-asset payments. You can seamlessly choose to hold an asset denominated in dollars and pay someone an amount of Bitcoin. After a nearly, we demonstrated these cross-currency payments and cross-asset payments way back in 2014 and 2013 with these early wallets. And I'll just share a funny anecdote with you that I think drives home how crazy this innovation was. We had this thing called demo days at Ripple where we would do demonstrations for people inside the company. And I reserved a slot at a demo day. And I showed a demo of cross-currency, cross-asset payments. I pulled up a wallet on the XRP ledger and I said, I want to pay Jeff $50. And it said, you can pay from your Bitcoin balance with 0.002 Bitcoin. You can pay from your XRP balance with 57 XRP. You can pay from your USD balance. You can pay from... And the prices actually changed in real time to reflect the actual exchange rates of those assets. And everybody was blown away. They're like, this is one of the coolest things we've ever seen. What is this? And I said, this is the old Ripple desktop wallet, the latest version from 2014. And people are like, why is this not like the greatest thing in the world? And that ability to have assets interoperate seamlessly, that type of interoperability and compatibility is something that is still very hard to find. And the XRP ledger has been providing that capability day in and day out since 2012. And lastly, thank you. Well, save your applause for the next thing I'm going to say, because I want to emphasize here that after a nearly 3-year battle with the SEC and the worst Christmas ever, the court has ruled, this is a federal court in the United States, has ruled that as a matter of law, XRP in and of itself is not a security. Yeah, that one. You can applaud all you want for that one. I mean, I could just sit down and let you guys applaud for the rest of my slot because that was, that was an incredibly difficult 2.5 years. That was a dark, kind of a little bit of a dark time for us. Other than Bitcoin, XRP is now the only digital asset with regulatory clarity in the United States. Yeah, I'd applaud for that one too. So let's talk about some of the innovations. Let's look back at this phenomenal year of building on the ledger, both by RippleX engineers and the developer community. I'm going to cover different ledger updates completed by different teams now. Some done by RippleX, the company I work for, some by XRPL Labs, PureSys, and other members of the community. XLS 38D is an amendment to support cross-chain bridges. This enables interoperability between different networks. The XLS 38D proposed standard will allow tokens from one blockchain to be locked in an account on the XRP ledger, while an equivalent amount of tokens is issued on another blockchain, increasing the use cases and adoption of the XRP ledger. The team has made design changes to XLS 38D to support multiple bridges per door account for libraries, explorers, witness servers, and to improve user experience. I want to take a minute to explain why I think these cross-chain bridges are important and why sidechains are important. The XRP Ledger main network is great for payments. It's the home of XRP, and you can use it for other things too. But the idea that everybody will be able to do everything that they might want to do on a single layer one is just unrealistic. No matter how much it scales, there's going to be a limit. And there's going to be people who are going to want to do higher numbers of transactions. There's going to be people who want more computing power. There's going to be people who want very specialized transactors that demand a lot of resources. There's storage that can only go around so much. And there's trade-offs with putting something on the XRP Ledger mainnet. If you put something on the XRP Ledger mainnet, every XRP Ledger mainnet node has to store and relay those transactions. And that creates a scarce resource that we can only divide so far. It's a lot, but it is not infinite. Whatever capacity it has, that's all it has. Whatever capabilities it has, there are going to have to be capabilities that it doesn't have. No layer one is ever going to be everything to everyone. And if we don't want that to be a huge downside, if we don't want that to fragment the community, what we need is the ability to have asset portability so that XRP is not limited to the XRP ledger, or other issued assets aren't limited to their home ledgers. Because if you want to build up some other function on some other ledger, you have to be able to get real value onto it. If you have to build a new token or issue a new stablecoin or just build up the sort of whole asset infrastructure from the ground up, that's going to stifle innovation. The other thing that it's great for is to be able to test out things that might be useful on the main network. I'll talk about hooks later, but hooks is a good example of something that you might not want to adopt on the main network immediately because of some of those trade-offs. No matter how good you think it is, it has costs associated with those benefits. And it would be sort of risky in the extreme to just adopt it on the mainnet and hope that those trade-offs work out in our favor. The level of confidence that you need to have to risk harming the main network is very, very high. So these sidechains through cross-chain bridges provide a ramp to be able to prove that a technology works in the real world, handling real money, show its impact to things like network stability, fees, and resource consumption, and then you can make a much stronger case for including it on the mainnet. So that's going to enable, along with some of the other things I'm going to talk about, much broader development. That's really going to turbocharge the development of features for the XRPL mainnet. And even if they don't get adopted on mainnet, that's still fine. We still get to use them. And we can use them with the same tokens, using the same tools, using the same wallets, and get that great user experience of people who get to experience all of those features. Because if you can't find a user experience anywhere in our ecosystem, that's going to shrink the ecosystem. And it can't all be on mainnet. It's not possible. One example of a sidechain is the EVM sidechain. Nice thing about the EVM sidechain is that it's easy to develop on for people who know how to develop smart contracts on EVM. Developer teams at PeerSys, they've been busy working on this blockchain in parallel with the main XRPL blockchain. It is now live on DevNet. That's where developers can test implementations before they go live on the mainnet. The sidechain is connected to that XRPL sidechain DevNet via a bridge. This is a decentralized bridge. That's very important. And it uses the XLS38D cross-chain bridging functionality to bridge to that XRPL network. So that's a bridge that connects the development network to the test instance of the sidechain. The next step is going to be to adopt XLS38D on the XRPL mainnet. Once that amendment is approved by the validator community, a new EVM sidechain can be launched to the XRP Ledger mainnet, of course, as can other sidechains. All components of this solution should be production ready to handle real-world scale and real-world use cases. The solution will be a decentralized one. Nodes will be run by different XRPL community members. Really excited to bring a sort of compatible version of smart contracts to the XRP Ledger ecosystem. People already know how to develop them. There's a broad ecosystem of tools. Complementing that, of course, is hooks, which I talked a tiny bit about before. This is some work done by XRPL Labs and Wietse Wynn's team. Hooks is a bespoke, light smart contract solution for the XRP Ledger, complementary to the EVM sidechain. One of the things I like the most about Hooks is that it is built in sort of the XRP Ledger spirit. The XRP Ledger, when it was developed, we could have just adopted everything Bitcoin did and been another sort of clone of Bitcoin, but we didn't. We rethought things from the ground up. We thought about decentralization. We thought about performance. We thought about making something that's sort of light. And Hooks definitely embodies that spirit. As I mentioned during my Apex keynote last year, we at Ripple are very much in support of Wietse's efforts. It's very, very cool landmark. Just recently, it passed a comprehensive security audit this year. That is extremely difficult to do for a feature this complicated. So that's, as someone who's written features of complex features that have to pass third-party security audits. That's a very, very difficult thing to do and a very significant accomplishment and absolutely essential to risk large amounts of value. So yeah, that's a huge. Now, you can't do everything that you could do in an EVM platform with hooks, but you can do a very significant fraction of important use cases, and that's only going to grow over time. And there are a lot of downsides of sort of a Turing-complete or EVM-compatible sidechain that you don't have with hooks. If you think about like the way Ethereum itself works, everything about it is built to support smart contracts. There's an enormous number of trade-offs in terms of confirmation time and fees and stability and resource consumption that you have to make to support a smart contract implementation that heavy. The trade-off is that you can support very, very complicated functionality. Hooks draws a different trade-off. You can't do literally everything that you could do, but all of the important, interesting things I think you will be able to do, and in exchange, you won't have that unpredictability with fees, the resource consumption. So fantastic, fantastic work. And the other cool thing about it is Ripple had absolutely nothing to do with it. We funded some of the developers, but it's not our project. Like, they tell us great things about what they've done, and we silently applaud. That sometimes creates the perception that we're not supportive. We absolutely are. It's just it's not our project, and we're not going to try to take it over. We're going to just watch and cheer from the sidelines, and occasionally maybe some funding if they need it. You know. So I want to talk about XLS 40. This is a decentralized ID specification. We're very, very excited about this. This focuses on decentralized identity. A DID, for those of you that don't know, stands for decentralized identity. It's a self-sovereign identifier that's stored on-chain. It's managed from a crypto wallet, and it contains metadata that links to personal information. The personal information is stored off-chain. They provide a secure, decentralized way for individuals and institutions to verify their identities and their ownership of assets. The standard was developed by the World Wide Web Consortium. The W3C developed the original DID spec and standards for verified credentials. At the highest level, security and privacy are prioritized in the design, which ensures that users don't store any sensitive information on the ledger. Interoperability and portability are also supported. The team has taken this into consideration, and it should seamlessly integrate with other DID systems to provide a decentralized identity ecosystem with your identity based on the XRP ledger. Now I get to talk about my favorite subject, which is the AMM. I am unreasonably excited about this for largely personal reasons. I've spent a lot of time studying things like trading strategies and Forex markets, and this is near and dear to my heart. I also learned something that I didn't know, which is as I watched automated market makers develop on other chains, I sort of thought that automated market makers were better than order books. That like we implemented order books on the XRP ledger because it's sort of like the obvious thing, and then there's this really cool thing called an automated market maker that most other like DeFi platforms are using, most other DEXs are using. And I learned as I looked into it that they're very complementary. They are not one or the other. One is not better than the other. They each have their own advantages and disadvantages, and the two of them together is way better than anything that you could get from having either one independently. And XLS 30 is not just another AMM implementation. This was not the XRP ledger playing catch-up. We were caught up with an order book. This is a true innovation. The XRP ledger is a trusted and leading enabler of DeFi because the underlying architecture of the ledger, combined with the protocol-native design of the decentralized exchange, and soon the AMM, will address most of the pain points faced in the decentralized liquidity landscape today. The XRPL's DEX was launched in 2012, the first DEX in the world, tokenization of any asset, the ability to trade and move these tokens anywhere in the world in just seconds, and open, globally competitive liquidity. Now, adding AMM to that, AMM, first and foremost, as I think about it, most people think of an AMM first and foremost as providing liquidity. I think of it first and foremost as a trading engine. RippleX is focused on differentiating the world's first DEX through automated market making. The AMM specification is now on DevNet for testing, and it'll be available to vote on mainnet, I think just in a couple of days. But ultimately, I see the AMM as a trading engine. It executes a trading strategy on behalf of those people who sort of provide the liquidity. So as most of you probably know, an AMM has a pile of two assets, and it makes markets between those two assets. But it's also implementing a trading strategy. The trading strategy profits from volatility, that is, changes in the price of an asset. So if you think about assets that have very volatile prices, cryptocurrencies probably have the most volatile prices of any asset class like in human history, except maybe tulips in the 1400s. You can actually harvest that volatility to generate a yield. So if you were an apple buyer and seller and the prices of apples were different around the world, you could go around the world buying and selling apples and make a profit. And what you would have is you'd have a pile of apples and a pile of currency, whatever currency you like, euros or dollars, and you would buy apples and your pile of apples would go up and your pile of currency would go down. And you would do that when the price was low. And then you would sell apples, right, when the price of apples was comparatively higher. And if you do that, eventually your pile of money will get bigger. And that is essentially what the AMM tries to do. It implements a trading strategy to harvest volatility on behalf of the liquidity providers who loan it assets. I'm much more personally excited about that than I am about the fact that it provides liquidity, but it does also provide liquidity. It does also make markets. Yeah, exactly. But we normally think of arbitrage as arbitrage over space, right? Like you go to this market and you buy, and you go to that market and you sell, and you go to this market and you buy. This is arbitrage over time, but it turns out arbitrage works over time too. The only problem is you don't know the price ahead of time, right? You can't predict, but it turns out you don't need to. So an exciting development also is Orchestra Finance, independent of Ripple, which is going to be the first interface layer for the AMM. So it provides benefits for all of the different stakeholders, the liquidity providers, the people who sort of take their assets and give them to the DEX, arbitrageurs, traders, and developers. Developers, of course, benefit from the liquidity that the automated market makers provide. Their tokens are more liquid, and so users can benefit from access to that liquidity. Liquidity providers want to maximize the returns that they get from the various different things that the automated market maker does to make a profit. XLS30 enables them to vote for trading fees. And probably the biggest single innovation is the continuous auction mechanism that reduces impermanent loss, and it also increases the efficiency of the volatility harvesting. What this does is this takes some of the profit that would normally be made by the arbitrageurs and gives it to the liquidity providers. The arbitrageurs are trying to make profit from sort of asymmetric information. They have access to the prices off the ledger, and the AMM does not. The auction mechanism increases the probability of success to capture mispricing profits, and it enables the automated market maker's trading strategy to capture very small changes in price. If you think about it, big movements in price have a larger opportunity for profit simply because the price change is bigger. Like if you're buying and selling a stock and it moves a lot, you can make more money. But it doesn't do that very often. Small movements occur much more often. And in aggregate, if you sum them all up, it's a greater opportunity than the large movements. But in order to catch the small movements, the system has to be very efficient. If there's a high fee, a small change in price won't be captured because people wait until the price difference exceeds the fee. If the transactions are slow and there's a small movement, you don't try to capitalize on that because the price might move against you before your trade can execute. The XRP ledger's features make it easy to capture those smaller price movements. And of course, integration. The AMM is going to be integrated in the DEX. So that will ensure that people who use for payments will get the best price execution, and it will ensure that the AMM is able to capture those smaller price movements. So that integration it's just, I'm really excited to see how that integration turns out. All right, let's talk about some core ledger updates. These are the RippleX folks working down in the mines, working on the core ledger infrastructure. We thank them for their hard work. It is extremely difficult just because of the danger. If you mess with things, you can break a multi-billion-dollar system. So, but we can't let that bring us to stagnation. XRPL plugins, these are really exciting. Right now, if you want to add a new feature to the XRP ledger, you may have to make small changes in 10 different places. That's very hard to maintain, it's hard to do, it's hard to be secure, and you have to do it in C++ because C++ is the language. This idea of plugins will mean that you can encapsulate the feature, and it might plug in a couple of different places, but the feature is sort of logically encapsulated. And that will enable people to build modules that will plug into RippleD. They don't have to be in C++, they can be in other languages, and that'll make it easier for people who aren't familiar with C++ to develop these features. It'll also be nice for people developing features for sidechains and so on. If every sidechain has 57,000 patches to the XRP ledger software, it's going to be a mess. So they need to be modular. We'll support Rust, Python, C++, and JavaScript, we hope, just in the beginning. And this will make it easier. Again, building sidechains will be so much easier when you don't have to make changes in a large number of different places. And there's nothing worse than changing software in a large number of different places. Encapsulating all your changes in one place just makes that development so much easier. Being able to say, here's the module that does this thing that we want to do, instead of here's the 70 things you need to change. And of course, if I make 70 changes and someone else makes 70 changes, they may conflict. If I build a module and someone else builds a module, they won't conflict. Huge, huge innovation. Always improving performance and scalability, throughput improvements, reduced memory consumption. This is mostly coming from Ripple, updates to the core ledger. Memory consumption is important, transaction throughput, I/O efficiency, network usage. These kinds of things are extremely important. They make the system much more stable, and they decrease the cost to run a node. But if a cost to run a node is high, then many people won't run their own nodes. That not only drives people out of the ecosystem, but it reduces decentralization, because when you use other people's node, someone else's node, there's someone you're trusting. So we want to keep the cost to run a node low, and we also want to be able to add new features. Let's say we wanted to add hooks to mainnet. If we were right at the limit in terms of memory consumption and storage and I/O, there's no way we could add a feature that sort of takes resources. The AMM takes resources. The NFT feature takes resources. If we're at the limit of what our technology can do, then we can't add features. So these improvements are extremely important. And on the other side is stability and robustness. This is about not accumulating bugs. Old code is going to break. New code is going to add bugs sometimes. We can't allow the bugs to sort of increase. So we fixed some node size estimation issues, an issue with subtotaling and gateway balances. We added the network ID field to prevent replay attacks, and we modernized the API to make it a little harder to shoot yourself in the foot, like not accepting the seed and the public key. Updates for newer compilers like Clang 16, fixes and markers, and other bug fixes. I know these are not as sexy as new features, but this is extremely important, because if your code gets buggier and buggier and buggier, eventually it's going to fail catastrophically. Like, you can't accumulate technical debt. The Conan recipe, Conan. What is good, Conan? To destroy your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. Some of you might be old enough to know what I'm talking about. But Conan is fantastic. I've been developing on the XRP ledger for a very long time. Sometimes I have the wrong version of Boost. I have to install a certain version of RippleD needs a newer version of Boost. My system can't use the newer version of Boost, so I have to switch the version of Boost and switch it back. Oh, but NewDB needs an earlier version of Boost. OK, what's a version of Boost that works with both? It's a nightmare. This figures out all of the dependencies for you, figures out all the versions that work, and automatically installs them just for RippleD. It is a huge quality of life improvement for developers. And if people are trying to develop sidechains and they're trying to integrate in their own tools, they would have to do the nightmare of figuring out what versions of everything their tools work with. It would be a nightmare. Conan does all of that for you. And of course, libXRPL, which is really nice. This is a core library of RippleD for C++ projects, and it integrates with Conan recipes. So it'll find the right version of libXRPL for you and make everything work. This is extremely important. So a couple of near-term call-outs. Talk about a little bit what's coming up ahead. Most of the things are things that I've already talked about. The AMM activation on mainnet, we hope, is coming up. We're excited about the EVM sidechain going live, hooks, and of course, more stability, security, and cost improvements. That's going to keep happening. So where can you go for more information? So here are some of the resources that you can look at, and there's a QR code. I'll give you some time to get that in a minute. The XRPL Foundation, our co-host for Apex, one of the biggest supporters of the XRP ledger and an independent nonprofit. Thank you. The XRPL Commons, newly founded org in Paris, held by David Bachiri, who you're going to hear from very shortly. Companies, developers on their journeys, provides education, guidance, and resource. Again, big thank you to him and his group. The XRPL Viewer, where you can view the XRPL mainnet activity. There's many of them, but this is one. XRPL Grants and XRPL Accelerator. These are Ripple programs that cultivate newer developers to build on the XRP ledger. The program managers are here. Guys, you want to show off who you are? All right, they're hiding. Oh, wait, did I see someone? They're here. And of course, xrpl.org, which is where you can find general information about the ledger. You can find me on Twitter. I guess it's called X now, at Joel Katz, JoelKatz. And please follow at RippleXDev, RippleXDev. To conclude, the future outlook of the XRP ledger is bright, especially with the improvements and updates, but also with the developing crypto environment this year. I've enjoyed talking to you all. Thank you so much for coming. See you next year. And the QR code is right there.